Welcome to Marriage Minutes. And today we are going to finish up our conversation about the characteristics of marriage. We are reading an article by Natalia Walcott, and she defines 12 good characteristics of a marriage. And so we talked about we talked about the first 6 last week. Go ahead and check that video out if you want to know about those. But this week, we're going to talk about the last 7. So the last 6. Number 7 is the ability to deal with crisis and stress. This is something that Mark and I know as crisis intimacy. And so it unfortunately comes upon all of us. And I think that this area can test your marriage the most, because when something happens outside of your bubble, you don't have time to fix whatever is going on inside your bubble. All your attention and your energy is addressing that crisis, right? And so I think that it behooves you to prepare, because crisis is coming. The Bible said that in this life we will have trouble, we will have trials. And so the character building in your marriage needs to happen before that thing occurs, right? And it's going to happen. Something is going to happen. Somebody's going to lose a job. Somebody's parent is going to pass away. A child is going to be sick, or a child is going to not get good grades or get in trouble, or whatever the thing is. How strong you are before you go into the storm, to me, is what crisis intimacy stands on. And your ability to withstand whatever is going on externally really comes down to the strength of what's going on internally.
And I think sometimes, as bad as this may sound, I think sometimes the crisis is the very thing that a marriage needs to be strengthened. And to show the character of the marriage, to bring out some things that may have been hidden, that may have just been kind of laying dormant. And so it really, like they always say in church, you don't really, without going through a test, you don't have no testimony, and so I think the test of a marriage sometimes will be crisis. Maybe it was the small things that you overlooked that you didn't pay much attention to. And so now this big thing popped up, be it big, small, or big, you have to deal with collectively. And I think the stress piece of it all is just identifying, and especially if it's something outside the marriage that pulls one person away, you have to be able to identify and just be in prayer, because it's affecting you, because if it's a parent or something like that, you had a relationship with that person as well. But the spouse in which it's their parent, they're torn, and they're dealing with a lot. And so you got to be able just to say, okay, I'm gonna give you your space, but I'm gonna pray for you, as well as when going through, because you're in the fog and you're in the daze, you have to just maybe sometimes realize that the other person is going through it as well, and just make a pit stop. And I think that's when you have to be vulnerable in terms of what you're feeling and how you're feeling, and that you don't have all the answers, which you're not supposed to. And so I think, that is definitely, stress and crisis will test the marriage. And so it's an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to be better.
Can I just say also, from a practical standpoint, if your spouse is the main person in the crisis, I think too that it shows some compatibility, it shows some commitment if you can take up their slack. Something practical I'm just thinking about, like if your spouse is the one that is dealing with whatever's going on externally, and their roles around the house. Maybe they were the person who was responsible for paying the bills or doing the dishes or whatever. Maybe this is your moment to help them and support them by taking on that responsibility during that time, so that the ball doesn't drop.
Or even extending yourself to the family to do something, maybe sometimes you miss something, and a kind act will go a long way, or I know you weren't thinking about this, but let me do this because I think it's something that we need to do, and so that's where teamwork comes in, and into which a person may not see everything, but you see some things that maybe need to be dealt with or handled, and you handle it. The next one is responsibility.
Own your own stuff. I think that we spend so much time focusing on what the other person is or is not doing that it does not give us opportunity to look at our own selves and look at our own stuff. And when I find when I own my stuff and instead of blaming Mark, we are in a much better situation when everybody carries their own load versus putting the load on the other person. We all have a role to play in how things go down in our relationships. We cannot blame 100% of anything on one person. You played a role in it, own your part, no matter how big or how small it is, and keep it moving.
Compassion.
Oh, that was okay. Keep it moving.
Keep
Go
it
ahead.
moving. I mean, you said it like
All right.
compassion. I just think sometimes you have to act,
That's
not passion. I said it says compassion, not passion. Compassion. You have to be selfless. You have to have a mindset of compassion and mercy. You have to view your spouse and be compassionate about it. I mean, you have to be in tune to the marriage. You have to have a fight attitude towards just progressing. And, we have a good friend of ours used to always say, it's not about you. And it is not really. It's never really about me as much as we want it to be about ourselves in our marriage. It's not about me. It's about having a servant's heart.
Okay. Being empathetic and sensitive. Now, this is an issue for us because I think it's twofold. I think that we are sometimes too sensitive in our relationships. And we then want the other person to toughen up, buttercup, tough it up, buttercup. But I don't know that that's what that's speaking to. I think we have to be sensitive to each other's needs, sensitive to each other's nuances, sensitive and empathetic to how that person is feeling in the moment. And when you're in a relationship that's very jokey and sarcastic right here, I think those lines become blurred and it's like, oh, this wasn't the time to be funny. Oh, okay. Oh, that went too far. Oh, okay. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that or whatever. Or is the joke more important than the feelings of that person? So I think this is an area I feel like Mark and I struggle in being empathetic because we both were raised by families that were just like, suck it up. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay.
No, you don't have anything to say? Okay.
I think you said it all.
Okay, fine.
I think we just have to learn not to be as sensitive, but I think as well as we have to learn we reap what we sow. And so that we get mad when it's reaped on our behalf. And it's just like, okay, really? Okay. That's how we act in a day. But you move on. Don't be so sensitive. Honesty, trust, and fidelity. 3 words all in one topic of character. I think honesty, trust, and fidelity. I think marriages go through peaks and valleys of this. I think it's always challenging those areas. I think this characteristic of a good marriage is tested all the time. And I think once you pass the test, it's kind of put on the back burner. But I think it's such a huge test in terms of how we interact with one another, how we interact with the world. Trust doesn't necessarily always have to be tied to fidelity or infidelity. I think trust goes with what your responsibilities are within the marriage. Have you shown yourself responsible enough, which was one of the other characteristics earlier, that you consistently do this thing consistently? And so, yeah, I know. I think the important aspect of it is that you build trust over time. And then when you do something to undermine that trust, you don't necessarily start all over, but you start all over.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because it's the other, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry. I really am sorry.
So you build all this trust up and then you do something that undermines. And yeah, you do start all over, but you have the insight of how to get it back. But you have to be empathetic, not sensitive, and you have to have a willingness to do the things you need to do to earn that trust back. You have to have the heart to get it back if it's that important. So that's where the honesty piece ties into it. And you have to be a willingness to reap what you sow and to really go through it until that trust gets back to that point again where it was before you had to get back to the end of the line, so to speak.
Yeah, if I break the trust, I don't have the right to then say he should trust me again now. Like, he has to determine that. And I, as the willing partner wanting to build back trust, really needs to be willing to do whatever it is to make him feel safe again. And I think that's where we get stuck. I apologize to that already. You still over that? You still in that? Well, yeah, you broke my heart. And maybe it was only a little break, or maybe it was a huge break. But if you want my heart back, then you have the responsibility to mend it, however long it takes.
And the last characteristic is?
Adaptability, flexibility, and tolerance. I just think this comes down to having patience. We are all works in progress. We are all hopefully growing and evolving as people. And I think that if we take responsibility of our own selves and our own growth and development, you will look up and realize that your marriage, the character of your marriage has gotten stronger because you're doing your own internal work. I'm never going to get off of that. Right. I could blame Mark all day long for this, and this, but it really comes down to me. And does he have responsibility? Absolutely. But I have to be patient with him just as much as I expect him to be patient with me. I have to be tolerant of him. He has to be tolerant of my wonderful jokes.
Even we're just gonna keep.
I just say it again.
Right,
okay, that's all.
Just gonna
all right, I'm done.
Keep nibbling at it.
Okay.
Just picking. And I think, Kobe Bryant said this. I was looking at him on IG. It's funny how much wisdom and how much nuggets he's been dropping. But anyway,
he's not dropping.
Well, he's not dropping them, but people are. I mean, he dropped them when he,
yes,
he was alive.
Yes. Okay.
But he was saying, in order to have patience, you have to be impatient, and so one without the other, you're not going to grow to have patience until you grow how to get out of your being impatient. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, oh, I got patience today. No, your impatience is going to be put in a situation in which you got to show patience. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, that's a good one. Flexibility and accountability.
So we're going to review all of them, then we out.
Yeah, let's review them all.
Affection. I don't remember. They're all jumbled in my head.
Yeah, they're all gone now.
They're all gone.
Oh, there it is. So number 7.
Ability to deal with crisis. So crisis intimacy, responsibility, compassion, empathy, and sensitivity, trust, honesty and fidelity, and then adaptability, flexibility, and tolerance are the last things. So we want you to evaluate your marriage. Where do you land in those 12 areas? Do some regrouping, have a family meeting, discuss those areas, discuss your areas of growth and your strengths, and keep it moving at his pace. Ha!
Be well, be blessed.